Great team presenting our new school API today. Basically going to go over how you can access the school API and what you can build with it. Before we get started, just a brief reminder that this is brought to you by Onboard Informatics. And for those on the call that aren't familiar with Onboard, we've been in business for about 15 years. We provide data on every property and community in the country. And while you may not know who we are, you might know some of our clients. They use our data in a lot of innovative and exciting ways. And we're thrilled to add the new school API to the data that we deliver on our developer platform.
Thanks, Erin. Alrighty, so we're going to start just by talking about some of the high-level things for the new school data that we just added to the API. We added 3 new calls. We think all of these that we'll go through in more detail in a minute will help you efficiently pull in school data that your customers care about. We included both public and private schools. I know sometimes that this can be a customer pain point because of attendance zones and districts, and sometimes you really can't get both. So wanted to highlight that we really tried to find good ways to include both of those. We also have ratings and boundaries. So we know that when customers go and look at schools, one of the first things that their eyes are drawn to are ratings. And when it comes to boundaries, it's really important when we start talking about public schools and attendance zones and where kids can and can't go to certain schools. So with that, we'll jump into the first call that we added. It's the property details with school call. Really, the focus here was to allow anyone looking at a certain property to understand what schools are in the area that their kids could go to while living at that property. So a lot of you are probably familiar with our current property detail call. Returns a lot of basic information about a property, things from beds and baths down to latitude and longitude of where the house is located. Really just a bunch of details about the property. And what we've now added is all of the schools that are within the appropriate attendance zones. That could be an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school. It could include any different combination of public schools that fall within those attendance zones. The school snapshot. That's the second call we added. The focus here was really to make sure that we brought in private schools. Since private schools don't have attendance zones, it was really crucial to be able to find a way where we weren't just going to leave you and your customers stuck with looking at public schools. So this allows for a point and radius search that pulls in any different institutions within that area. Lastly, the school detail call. This is really, now that you've presented your users with some summary information from the snapshot call or the detail with schools call, they know things like ratings, they may know the grade range if you decide to show that. This is really, if you want to dive deeper into a school, you can now allow your users to select a school, make the school detail call, and get everything from start date and end date to enrollment rates to special programs to the principal's name and contact information. Really the end-all be-all of all the data that you would want to know about a school.
So if you navigate over to developer.onboard-apis.com/docs, this will bring you to Onboard's developer portal. So if you go down to here, interactive docs under property API, you will see amongst the other calls are the school calls. So the first one that we're going to go through is the property detail with schools call. So this, a good example of when this would be useful for would be for a listings, because it returns a bunch of property detail as well as school information at the end, and it will return only schools that the residents of that property can attend instead of all the schools within the district. So that's useful for people. It won't mislead people into thinking that you can attend a high school when you're not zoned for it. And the second call that we're going to go through is the school snapshot call. And what the input parameters that it takes are a set of longitude and latitude coordinates of any property or anywhere really, and then as well as a search radius. What this call is very useful for is to return all the public and private schools in a certain radius. This is that's useful because you will never be quote unquote zoned to go to a private school because private schools do not have school districts. So this is useful for that. It'll show private, public, Catholic schools, special education schools, and all sorts of schools to accommodate any sort of educational needs. And the last call that we're going to go over is the school detail call. This call is for when you want to take a deep dive into the school details, such as the curriculum, the superintendent of the school, as well as the district, any sort of programs that are available at the school, such as ESL, English as a second language, or any special education, and as well as the grade ranges and ratings and reviews, which are very important for parents before they select a school for their children to go attend. And these interactive docs are very useful because you can copy the API call right from here where it says the request URL, as well as an example of a curl request that is useful for implementation. These APIs are hooked up to our live APIs, so you will be hitting our production APIs. So these are what you will get when you pay for them. And also, lastly, you can change parameters that are not only just specified here as interactive fields. If you go down a little further, you can also see there's a bunch of fields that you can customize to in here the data dictionary, where you can specify and use as search filters and such.
Corcoran's always a great example. They've got a neighborhood section where they really try and show their customers an overview of an area where they would be living. So here you can see that they're pulling in points of interest data, but also school data. So if you wanted to know what schools are in the area, you could use the school call to return everything. You could show the distance away from the property you're looking at, or just show schools within a certain point in radius. So that's one good example of showing people when they're looking at a property what's in the neighborhood. Century 21 also does a pretty good job of showing listings and schools associated with those listings. So here you just see a pretty standard map with listings, and as you scroll down on one of their listings, you can see information about local schools that are pulled up. This shows the distance away from the certain property you're looking at, shows ratings, the grade range, whether it's a public or a private school, really just all the information you would want to know about schools nearby. The last example we'll show is not actually a current customer, but we know is really popular. So took a look at it. It's something that you could absolutely create and implement using our APIs, but this is on Redfin. So you can see here when they're looking at a particular listing, you can see all of the schools nearby, the ratings, the distance away, pull them up on a map. And then if you click on a particular school, you're going to get a full breakdown of all of the details of that school. So this is something that you could absolutely implement using our APIs, a lot of the same data, really just trying to show you some different ways that people are implementing this sort of data on their sites today and being pretty successful at having their customers be more engaged when it comes to looking at a listings page. We've walked through all of that. If you like what you see, you like the data, you're interested in using these, as Jason talked about, you can go start getting some real responses through the interactive docs, and there's no upgrade needed. If you have a key for our property API today, you can start using the school calls right away. The same integration, nothing special, just new endpoints with more data. And if you don't have an account with us, we do offer a free trial. If you go to the Onboard developer platform, you can sign up today and get your free trial API key and start hitting our production APIs.